right. I guess this is working. Let's hope it is. We'll give it a shot. See how it goes. Looks like it's working. All right. So, crappy webcam. Always fun. And, yeah, I figured I would go live here since I don't have a video ready for this week. I had some issues with some of the editing on my audio, and I actually lost audio. So I thought I would do a little bit of a reading / interpretation of the Havamal. So there's the Pocket Havamal, and then there's the Wanderer's Havamal by Jackson Crawford. The Pocket Havamal is by Benjamin Thorpe. I'm sorry, it's translated by Benjamin Thorpe and edited and designed by Carrie Overton. And then, of course, this here, like I said, is translation of Jackson Crawford. Now, the interesting thing is, and I was actually going to look this up before I actually started. And I also have some websites that folks can follow along on. Hey, Purple Status, welcome. Let's see. So I know it came out somewhere in like the 200s, 300s CE, somewhere in that ballpark. And I thought it would be kind of cool to look at modern interpretations and translations and have a discussion around it. So I can't remember the date, so I was going to try to grab the date really quick of when they had the first printing of the Havamal. Now, of course, a lot of people say Havamal, but as far as I know, it's pronounced Havamal. That's the way that I was researching how to pronounce it. Supposedly, it's supposed to be a text that was written by Othen, and I'm not sure how accurate that is, obviously, because, you know, it depends on who you ask. It was clearly written down by humans, but supposedly it was like wisdom. The wisdom of Othen is what it's referred to. Yeah, the 165 stanzas by Pello. Writing stanzas, some editors. And I am not seeing a date. Should have looked this up before I hit live. I just thought of it as soon as I hit the live button. Thought this would be easier to find. Apparently it's not. I'm probably going to go live on TikTok at the same time because I'm sure TikTok will get a kick out of this stuff as well. Let me try this. Also want to give some people a chance to join, so I'm sure this is going to be a boring part at the beginning of the live. Wonder if I can trim it later, too. Trim the start of the live. Might not be able to. Look at that, auto-populating and completing. Here we go. 1200 CE. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was a more recent text. Didn't know it was that recent. I thought it was closer to like... No, actually, that would make sense. That would have been shortly after the Viking era had ended. Because if we look at the time periods for when the Viking period had ended... Here, let's take a look at my notes. This is one of the reasons why I thought it would be kind of cool to display it like this. So here's some of my notes that I take. And, hold on, I'm trying to get my face out of the way. There we go. Get my face out of the way there. There we go. So the way that I understand it, these are the dates and time periods. So we're talking about 1066 is what we're talking about here, is when the Viking era ended. And we got the Poetic Edda in 1270, which is what this is suggesting here. 1270 CE is when they're saying that the Havamal was written. That kind of follows up pretty nicely. I think that that makes sense right around when we started writing stuff down. So who wrote down the first version of the Havamal? That's the other question. Most of the poems are believed to have been composed in Norway in the 9th and 10th century. See, this is the type of stuff I wanted to bring up originally, but I also thought it would make a good live, so here we go. Let's live about it, right? And apparently the Bellows translation is one of the most common and popular one. Yeah, the Havamal is a collection of ancient Norse wisdom thought to have been written down about 1270 CE. The title Havamal translates as Sayings of Har. Har is the High One, another name for Odin. Hence, the ancient text means saying of the High One. These sayings are a collection of poetry offering insight and wisdom to help one lead an honorable life. One theory about the Havamal is that before it was written down, it represents a way to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. So that's the way I always looked at it. And I think I will go live here on TikTok too. And then read this again, and I'll share the website for this. This is from fatefulsigns.com. What do we have here? Yeah, this one kind of confirms that too. Havamal, Icelandic poem, even though the one said it was from Norway. So now I'm kind of curious on that. Now I need to double check that. Because it's like you can't just go with one source or one reference, no matter who's giving you that source or reference. So let's go live on TikTok too. Go live. Okay, so we will be in multiple places all at the same time because we can. So let's zoom in a little bit on there. All right, so now we're live on both platforms. So I'm doubling down here. So that's the big question there. If it's going to say, so welcome TikTok for those of you just tuning in. We are talking about the Havamal today, or Havamal, some folks call it. All right. How about this? Let's say, where and when was the Havamal written? Because one place is saying Norway, one place is saying Iceland. Then, like I said, the translations I've got, because I'm using translations since I don't speak Old Norse, the translations I have are a little bit different here. And I will share some sites as well, because sources and sites are always important. See, this one also confirms that it was written in 1270 CE. So that's two different sources now confirming the date. Now the question is Norway versus Iceland when we talk about the Havamal and where it was written. Although both of these sources are confirming pretty much the same thing. And now I'm kind of curious if the beginning of this book here, The Wanderer's Havamal by Jackson Crawford, it actually might even say that in the beginning. It's been a while since I've thumbed through this. I actually jumped straight ahead to some of the readings here. So let me see what we got going on here. So let's see. They've appeared in the Poetic Edda, stories of the Norse gods and heroes. So he's written these in other books as well. I'm kind of curious. I bet you Jackson Crawford has that in here. Oh, that is really cool. Okay, this is why you buy books. Check that out. So that is a picture of probably what the Havamal looked like originally that they translated from. That is cool. You don't see that a lot. See, once again, confirmed in here as well. This written down in Iceland. See, okay, so that's two sources now that are saying Iceland instead of Norway. So one source says it was written down in Norway in 1270. This source here, which, let's face it, I trust Jackson Crawford more than I trust some of the other sources, especially random ones. So, oh, okay, this is why. And this is connecting all the pieces together. Let's see. So Havamal is an Old Norse poem attributed to the god Odin himself. and preserved together with other poems about the Norse gods and heroes in a collection called the Poetic Edda, which we know Snorri Sturluson had written down a lot of this stuff. Let's see, written down in Iceland in... See, I don't know why people use AD. I use CE for Common Era, and that's just because, you know, it's up to you. If you're Christian or you want to use that association, that's fine. But linguistic evidence, as well as the pagan contents of the poem, suggests that it was composed orally at a much earlier time, probably in the 900 CE, I'm going to say CE, in Norway. So this is suggesting that it came from Norway, which kind of falls in with this site here. And for those of you watching on YouTube, let me share some of this here. So let's pop on over here. That's not the one I was trying to bring up. So this one here is called faithfulsigns.com. And they're saying here the Havamal is a collection of ancient Norse wisdom thought to have been written down in about 1270 CE. The title Havamal translates as saying of Har. Har is the High One, another name for Odin. Hence the ancient text means saying of the High One. These sayings are a collection of poetry offering insight and wisdom to help one lead an honorable life. So that kind of matches up. Hey, how's it going? What is life? Welcome to the stream. So those just tuning in, so we're going to cross-reference a few things here. I've got a few translations available. I do have this one up here, which is awakenthenorth.org. It's a website that you can follow along with. I've got the Wanderer's Havamal by Jackson Crawford. I'll share that to both. And then I also have, which is one of the most common ones that everyone seems to talk about, which is the Pocket Havamal. And the Pocket Havamal is, let's see, translated by Benjamin Thorpe. The Pocket Havamal is not bad because it goes directly into it. So it's all of the different stanzas because it's a poem, and it goes directly into the English translations. So you can see the English translations there. The website has a little bit of both. So the website, sorry you can't see this on TikTok for those hanging out on TikTok, but those that are on the YouTube live can see that they're showing both the Old Norse as well as, so let's see if I point on my screen, the Old Norse is over there, and then right here is English translation. So this is Bellows translation, which we were just talking about on the one site, which is kind of a go-to translation, but I like seeing and referencing different translations because having more information to go off of, I think, is fantastic. So here's Bellows translations, and then Dronke and Orchard's translations from 2011. So as you'll see here, there's variances in how folks translate these words, which I think is very, very important when you're trying to understand what it means. Not to mention researching the culture and what they wrote down, because it might have an impact. So let's reference all of these together. So let's start out with the Old Norse. Now, just to make it clear, I do not speak Old Norse. I speak a little bit of Icelandic, and my Icelandic that I speak is atrocious. It's just it's just enough to where my family from Iceland can understand me, but it's family, so they might be being kind of nice. So simple stuff like ég talar bara smolves íslensku en ég tala ekki vel, which literally translates into I speak a little Icelandic, but I don't speak it well. Ég refers to self or I. Tala or talar, you roll the R's, speak. You can also do skil, ég skil. Skil means understand. So I can say ég skil or ég talar. Bara smolves is very small. Smolves means small. So ég talar smolves íslensku. I understand or I speak very little Icelandic. Íslensku is how you say Icelandic. And then en refers to but. En. Then ekki is no, and vel is well, translates to well. A lot of our English words are actually derived from some of the Old Norse words, which is kind of fun. So here on the website, awakenthenorth.org, and actually we also have that here in Jackson Crawford's. Let's see, let me jump to the... There's a lot of cool information at the beginning of his, which I like a lot. He even talks a little bit about pronunciation, and like I said, I'm by no means an expert when it comes to pronouncing a lot of these words, but it's still fun. So yeah, exact same thing here, matches up exactly. So I'll hold this up for those of you on TikTok. There is the first one we're going to read. If you are on YouTube, you can see over my head here. So I would pronounce that Gatar allar Ather gandhi from skothast skilly skinnast skilly quith at ovist at vita quar oviner sidja a fleti firer. That's how I would do it. And I'm not saying, again, it's not perfect. But this is where it gets interesting, is when you have these variances in translations. So let's just look at that first part alone. So, gatir allar. And again, not perfect on the pronunciation. In Bellows' translation, he's translating that as all doorways. If we go down here to Dranke, he also says all doorways. Orchard says every gateway. So now we're getting a little bit of a variance here. I'm kind of curious. I probably need to put a bookmark in this so I don't have to keep jumping back and forth. So Jackson Crawford's The Wanderer's Havamal goes back and forth between the English. So there's the Old Norse on one side, just like I was trying to read, and here's the English on the other page. And I'll show that both here and here. So he says at every doorway as well. So at every doorway, every gateway, all doorways. So there's a variance in the translation, but I think we're getting the same meaning. I mean, you're talking about an entrance to some place. It's some form of an entrance. And as I mentioned, the Wanderer's Havamal, this says all doorways as well. So all doorways seems to be most common. It seems to be doorways versus gateway. So I'm not sure why Orchard would have translated this a little bit differently, but it is what it is, right? You know, everyone's going to have their own interpretation. So then this next part here, that specialized character, it looks like a D with a little hook at the top. That's actually pronounced like a TH. That is an Icelandic, well, it's used in Icelandic as well. But it is very similar to Eth, is the way it's pronounced. Like the name of the letter is Eth, like ETH, Eth. But it's pronounced very similar to a TH. So the way I would pronounce that would be author. And then Gungi from, author Gungi from is how I would say that. And Jackson Crawford translates that before you enter. Let's see what the Wanderer's Havamal, before going forward. Before going forward into is Bella's translation. And then before entering, before going ahead are Dranke. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. It might just be Drank and Orchard. So again, some mild variations in the translation, which I just, this is fascinating to me. And then let's see, skodast skilly, skodast skilly. So you should look around. Let's see what we have over here. Should be looked to. That's interesting. Pocket Havamal should be looked to. Bella's translation says all overlooked about should. Let's see. Dronk says should be spied out, and Orchard says one should peer at. So that's kind of wild there. So skodast skilly. Skodast skilly. This is why I want to learn Old Norse, and I want to learn how to read it properly. Because when you're doing these interpretations and these translations, you get such variance in what it could possibly mean. Oh, that's interesting. So what is this here? On text, and it's pseudo-English literal translations. I apologize. So I've been saying Bella's translation. So for those of you on YouTube, you can see this isn't Bella's translation. That's the exact translation. Bella's translation here says, within the gates, ere a man shall go, full wary let him watch. So that kind of pulls things a little bit more together, doesn't it? What's our next line here in this stanza? First stanza. Skignast, probably butchering that, skilly. All over pride should is the literal translation. Bellows is saying, full long let him look about him. Crawford says, you should take a good look around. Let's see. should be scrutinized. One should glimpse at. And for, oh, okay. It looks like should be looked at. Should be looked to, I'm sorry. So the pocket Havamal says should be looked to. Yeah. Again, a small bit of variance here. I'm actually going to put down the pocket Havamal, and I'm going to stick with 2 translations, because if I'm jumping between 5 books, I'm probably going to cause everyone confusion, and I'm going to turn what could literally be a 5-minute conversation into a 1-hour one. But if you're here to study the Havamal, I don't know. I feel like looking at all this stuff might be useful. All right, so now we have this, again, this symbol here is the thorn symbol. And let's see, so you can see this on this stanza here. Since you are not on YouTube, you're on TikTok. That right there, that kind of looks like a B, but with a little loop put towards the center of the line instead of at the bottom. That's the thorn rune, and that's, again, pronounced like a TH. Very similar to the Eth one. Eth is slightly different. There's a little bit more airiness to it than the thorn one, as I understand it, but I pronounce them about the same. You get the same basic idea. So I would say Thviv at ovist at vita. And Bellows is saying, so here's the literal translation, because uncertain is to know, but Bellows is saying that this means for little he knows. Jackson Crawford says, for you never know. Similar, very similar. Now, interestingly enough, when you see these H and V together, it makes almost a Q sound. So I pronounce this quar uvenir, where none friends is the literal translation. Bellows says where a foe may lurk, and Crawford says where your enemies. And the last part, sit ya. Now see, J's in Icelandic are pronounced like Y's. So sit ya a fleti fyrir. Yeah, sit ya. The very last line there. Oh, you can see right above my head. Oops, this direction. This direction over here. Let me make myself a little bit smaller so that we can see this a little bit better. Oh yeah, I'm on the wrong screen. Here we go. There you go. So now you can actually read over my head a little bit better for those of you on YouTube. So yeah, once again here, looking at this translation, Bellows is saying that the first one is, within the gates ere a man shall go, full weary let him watch, full long let him look about him, for little he knows where a foe may lurk, and sit in the seats within. Crawford, at every doorway before you enter, you should look around. You should take a good look around, for you never know where your enemies might be seated within. Again, this is supposed to all be like the Book of Wisdom. It's supposed to be teaching folks how you're supposed to live life more honorably. It's like lessons in life. And like I said earlier, for those of you just turning in, the Havamal basically translates into the wisdom of Odin, or the wisdom of Har, which is another name for Odin, we believe. Odin had, just like many of the Norse deities, there was many nicknames for many of them, and I know Odin, I think there's been tons of references. I don't even know off the top of my head, but I believe it's over 20 different possible nicknames for Odin that he was known as. So yeah, so I think I would take this first one to mean quite literally just be aware of your surroundings, be cautious, you know, be aware of the threats and the dangers that lie around you. I think it's pretty straightforward. It mostly seems like it's referring to when you're going down to put yourself in a seated position. So if you think about it like entering a doorway, and when you're sitting in it, when you're sitting somewhere, it feels to me like you're suggesting that instead of being out and about to where you'd be more aware and you're standing up, you're going to a spot where you are going to relax and sit down, but you should be wary before being more relaxed, because you never know what threats might be present or before you. So I would almost take this like going to someone else's house, or going out in public, or going to a restaurant, to use that awareness of what's going on around you. Yes, hi Fang, my cat's saying hi. Hello, welcome to the live, and well, both lives, both on TikTok and on YouTube. Welcome everyone. All right, so let's go ahead and go on to the second one, because I'd like to at least cover 2 today, in our talkings. So again, this next one, I'm going to scroll down here for those of you on YouTube. And for those of you on TikTok, I will show you one of the books that I'm referencing. All right. So if you get down, this is a cool site. I definitely recommend checking out. So here's the second stanza. If you are on TikTok and you are not on YouTube, you can check out awakenthenorth.org. I'm also referencing The Wanderer's Havamal by Jackson Crawford. And then, of course, the Pocket Havamal, which is a nice one, too. But I'm not really flipping through that one right now because there's enough translations to work with here. All right. So where is the Old Norse listed here? Ah, there it is. I got to scroll down a little bit further. And again, Bellows translation, which is one of the main ones. So the way that I would pronounce this, and for those of you on TikToks, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the second stanza right down here. This is the way I would pronounce it. Gethinger, heiler, gester inkomen, quar skal sidja sja, sjau. Oh, I can't remember how to pronounce that type of an O. I'm just going to go with mjölk brother, sa a brondum skål, sins of fresta frama. Ooh, that was a butchering, wasn't it? So in this case, we're talking about the translation here. The literal translation of the first line is to the giver's good health. Crawford says, hail to a good host. And Bella's translation says, hail to the giver. Again, slight variances. This is why it's so much fun to have this variance about what you're talking about and how you translate it. The second line in the stanza here, a guest is income, or has come in, is the literal translation. Bellows says a guest has come, and Crawford says a guest has come inside. So, yeah. I can see all the differences on why they might translate it mildly differently here. All right, and then our third line here, where will he sit? And then it says self would be the literal translation here. They're not sure on the pronunciation there. They even tried to adjust here. There's a little note here on the website where it has SJA, and now JA is yow, which is yes, but putting an S in front of it, that's why I'm saying xiao, but it says equals just SA, and it takes out the Y, so I guess just sa would be here in that case is what they're suggesting, but I don't know. This is the parts where it gets slightly confusing. That's why it's fun to talk about and discuss. And by all means, for those that you are watching live, feel free to put your comments in the chat and let me know your interpretations on these too. Feel free to join in. This is not just me reading at you. Feel free to participate and share your interpretations. All right, so in this case, where will he sit? Where shall the stranger sit is Bellows' translation. And then Crawford's is where should he sit? Wonder why he's specifically saying he. Is there a part of this that specifically refers to male? Quar skal sidja sjau. Where will he himself sit? Where will the stranger sit? Where will he sit? That's interesting. And this mjölk brother, much is hasty. He is impatient. And Bellows is saying, swift shall he be who? And then our next one says, who is near the brands? Bellows says, with swords shall try. And Crawford says, standing on the threshold. So you have one that says standing on the threshold, one that says that it has to do with swords, and then another one that says brands. And so near the hearth or will. That's so weird. That's like a completely different interpretation of that line and its meaning. And one more time, and I know I've said this a few times now, but again, this is why it's so important, if you want to study this stuff, to learn Old Norse yourself and get your own interpretation. It's great to hear what other people say and how they would translate it, but understanding these words yourself would be fantastic, I think. All right, and then this last line here, ready to try his luck, himself be tried forward, and the proof of his might to make. So reading from the beginning to the end, Crawford says, "Hail to a good host. A guest has come inside. Where shall he sit? He is impatient, standing on the threshold, ready to try his luck." Interesting. Over here, the literal translation, "To the giver's good health. A guest is income. Where will he sit self? Much is hasty who is near the brand's will. Himself to tried forward." Bello translates this as, "Hail to the giver, a guest has come in. Where shall the stranger sit? Swift shall he be who with sword shall try the proof of his might to make." See, I'm not sure if I understand why Bellows would translate this as swords. Brondum skal. Sa a brondum skal. This is where it gets fun in interpretation. Hail to the host, a guest has come inside. He's impatient, standing on the threshold, ready to try his luck. Swift shall he be with a sword, and shall try the proof of his might to make. I don't even know how to interpret this one. It's so bizarre. So this is supposed to be wisdom for you to use. I mean, yeah, I guess you want to honor your host. That makes sense. Giver, host, whatever. Yeah, so if someone comes in, they should have a seat. You should have a seat ready for them. So you should always be welcoming, I guess, to strangers, passerbys, for a nice rest. But why are they hasty? And what is this with the sword or the brands? And they're wanting to prove themselves or try their luck. Why is he impatient? Standing on the threshold. Yeah, that's a confusing one to me. I don't know if I get much out of that. So on live on YouTube or TikTok, does anyone have any thoughts or interpretations? Feel free to share them. I'm not sure I understand that one, to be honest with you. I'm just going to say it outright. That's very confusing in all cases, regardless of whose translation we go with. I'm not sure how to interpret that into something that's useful. You know, I thought Crawford had a point somewhere in here where he breaks down what he thinks it means. Again, nice to read multiple stuff. Commentary on the Old Norse text on page 87. Let's see what he says here. See if maybe he gets a little bit more interpretation, since I'm not seeing any comments at the moment. Let's see. Stanzas 1, stanzas 2. Let's see. On the threshold, the Old Norse line in 5 reads, Brondum, which some earlier translators took erroneously as on swords. So that makes more sense why he's saying that it's not on swords, but some people depicted it that way. But given the non-martial context, the meaning here is the more one of something to be burned. Firewood, most likely the reference as Bjorn Magnusson Olsen proposed is to something like the earlier Norwegian custom of a newly arrived guest sitting outside on the firewood until he was invited in. Because there is no close equivalent English-speaking customs, I translate on the threshold to convey the sense of a guest not quite ready to come fully inside. That actually makes sense if you do it that way. Hey, Fedista. Welcome. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I just got a copy of this book. Oh, did you? It's a great book. I really like it. Let me hit show here. There might be a slight mild delay or lag, and I apologize for that if there is, in the stream on YouTube, because those messages just popped up. So if you messaged a little while back, I do apologize. There it is. My copy is by Kinfolk. Interesting. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different translations, and it's definitely worth checking multiple ones out. Like I said, the ones that I have is the Pocket Havamal, and then I have the Wanderer's Havamal by Jackson Crawford. And this is my favorite one because of all the extra different ones. Oh, the pocket Havamal. That's the one. Is this the one you got here? This one's not bad. This one is like a straight translation. Now, this one here says it's Benjamin Thorpe and edited and designed by Carrie Overton. So I don't know if you got the exact same one or not because you're mentioning someone else. You said by Kinfolk. Is this the same one? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. It is definitely a cheaper one. And like I said, it's nice because it just gives the straight up stanzas. And yeah, and here it says, Givers hail, a guest is come in. Where shall he sit? In much haste is he who on the ways has to try his luck. Actually, I almost like that translation better because if I tie together the notes here from Jackson Crawford and looking at what Bellows had up here, probably the first and second lines had originally nothing to do with the third and fourth. The last two reference to host or guest, but to the general danger of backing one's view with the sword. Other translations commentary. Heiler is a greeting now used in modern Iceland in order to welcome of someone of importance. The might not have been the case in ancient Iceland. Brandr means both brand, hearth, and sword blade. Its dative plural is brondum. Bellows' translation is therefore not absurd at all. It unfortunately slices up the stanza into two unconnected parts, as if it was of no concern to see Havamal as a ragbag of lines, a weak connection. However, could be spread to the last three lines the idea of fighting up Ursula Dronke uses, perhaps a bit too hastily, the Norwegian expression cited by Evans to translate Brondum by out by the fire stack, which implies that the guest is not yet inside the house. The rendition destroys the coherency of the stanza in a way different from Bellows. Freista, when joined to sin, means both to check oneself, to try one's courage, as translated by Boyer. The translation carries the meaning that whoever tries his fame near the fire should make haste to do it. This matches the literal understanding, but puts a humdrum in Odin's mouth. Near the fire should make haste. We have to imagine what is being nearby the brands in a hall with a fire at its center. It has to be a deliberate choice of the guest or host. Evan comments show that being placed nearby the hearth is not always an asset, since it does not always allude to a cozy warmth. It could even be that being placed nearby the brands is either a challenge or even a show of scorn from the host to his guest. Interesting. I will thus suggest that 4 different meanings can match a little understanding. Who comes with gifts is always welcome. He shall, however, quickly prove that he is bright among other guests of the house, whether is his given or chooses for himself, whether the best or the worst place. The 4 branched expressions tell that as much welcomed a person might be, he very well soon have to prove his worth. This translation gives back to the stanza a global coherency. It suggests that a conspicuous guest will always have to prove his or her worth. Who does not wish to be tried has to stay inconspicuous. The stanza states a fact. It expresses neither benevolence nor compassion. Wow. Huh. See, that's what I mean. Like, researching this stuff and getting some different takes on it is wild. Vedista says, mine has a tree on the front. Okay. Bellows looks like he tried to fit it into English language media popular at the time. Right. And I think Bellows is one of the most well-known translations, and it's the one most people are familiar with. Yeah, but that's why I like to cross-reference stuff like this. I want to learn Old Norse and translate it myself, but even when you do a literal translation, it might not make perfect sense. So you're going to give gifts, you're going to be impatient, you're going to stand by the threshold. So I'm not really, I don't know. I'm not sure how to interpret this into wisdom for everyday life. The first one makes sense, like I said, just be aware of your surroundings, but this one doesn't make as much sense to me. I get a little bit more confused with this one. Let's go on to the third one, and I think that'll be a good stopping point unless folks want to talk more about things in the chat. We can definitely prolong this a little bit, but I at least want to get through one more. So in this third one here, all right, there's a little translation, so I'm going to scroll down so you can follow along with what I have on the screen. I'll hold it up for those in TikTok that want to play along as well. So here's the third stanza. I would pronounce this as Elds Thorf, Thymes in Komen, Ok a ni Kallen, Matar ok Vada, Mani Thorf, Thyme Hefr Fjall Forrit, traveled. Oh, because travel's part of the other part. Travel's not part of this part. That was the part below. My bad. I should have read out of the book. Will you pin other translations you think are good? Mine does not have the original language. Absolutely. Definitely going to recommend you pick up this one. Like I said, it's my favorite. It's just The Wanderer's Havamal by Jackson Crawford. A huge fan of this guy's stuff. He does YouTube videos as well. Really like his stuff. It sounds really good in the original tongue, right? And I'm doing my best based upon my limited understanding of Icelandic. So, like I said, Eki Talar. Enyek Eki Vet. Oh yeah, Enyek Eki Vet is I don't well. So Yek Talar Eki Vel. Yeah, that would be I don't speak well. Yek Talar Eki Vel. I don't speak well. Talar. Speak. Eki. No. I know speak well. It's, translating is fun. And I only know, like I said, I only need a handful of phrases. But like I said, my family can understand me. It's good enough. But doing my things with drops and pimslers, I can do enough for them to understand what I'm attempting to say. So it counts. It works for me. All right. It sounds like other spoken Old Norse I have heard by scholars. I think you have it down. Thank you. I appreciate that. Doing the best I can with what I know. Let's see. So how are we going to translate this? Elds Thorf. Of the fire is need. Crawford says he needs a fire. And then let's see. So this is the literal translation up here. But if we go down a little bit, this is what Bellows translates it as. Fire he needs. He needs a fire. So yeah, fire is needed. This Elds Thorf. Fire is needed, for sure. Thymes in Komen. And I'm not sure if the double N should be pronounced slightly different, but that's how I'm going to do it. To him who is come in. Who with frozen knees. That's really weird, Bellows. The one who has just come in. Well, that's interesting. So the next line here. Ok ani Kalin. And at knees is frozen, is the literal translation. And he'll say here, he says who with frozen knees, and then says has come from the cold without. So he kind of inverts these two lines here. He comes in and frozen knees. So Bello kind of flipped that around. That's interesting. And Crawford says his knees are shivering. Yeah. I think that's pretty straightforward. I bet you this knee here is literally knee. I'm not sure about this Colin, but okay. Matar ok vada. Little translation is meats and clothes. Bello says food and clothes, and Crawford says food and dry clothes. We have some consistency there. And I think this is about, again, we're talking about living honorably from these lessons here. Ermani Thorf. Is a man need, must the fairer have, and will do him well. Thyme hefr fjall forret. To him who is lifted beyond the mountain traveled, the man from the mountains comes after his journey over the mountains. Okay, so we got several translations here. Let's focus in on Bellows. Fire he needs, who with frozen needs has come in from the cold without. Food and clothes must the farer have. the man from the mountain comes. And Crawford, he needs a fire. The one who has just come in, his knees are shivering. Food and dry clothes will do him well after his journey over the mountains. And again, taking this as a lesson to live your life more honorably, this makes a lot of sense to me. Basically, if you have a traveler who's coming by and they're freezing, invite them inside and offer them food and shelter. Give them fresh, clean clothes. You know, they're going to be soaking wet traveling through the snow. It's just about hospitality, in my opinion. I think this one's pretty straightforward, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So, all right. Welcome. Welcome to the live, Nick. Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. What do you all think? What stands out to you about the third stanza? Okay, I probably should schedule these lives so more people can attend. I'm talking to myself, which is fine. It is what it is. I am going to end the live here on TikTok. People are popping in but not staying, so that's fine if they're not interested in the Havamal. But I am going to continue for a little bit on YouTube. So ending the live on TikTok. All right. Let me close that. And let's talk for a little bit here on YouTube about thoughts. Like I said, this is sort of my replacement for not having a video ready for uploading this weekend. So I figured I would do a live to kind of compensate for it. I don't know enough about it to answer, but I like the subject and want to know more. Fair enough, fair enough. And nothing wrong with that. And it's all about, you know, just sharing your thoughts in general. So some of the things I want to point out before I end the live on YouTube, oh, my book is bent, that's not good, is looking at some of this stuff here, right? So first and foremost, here is the Elder Futhark. We'll talk about this for a little bit. The Elder Futhark was Proto-Germanic. This was before the Viking era. So these letters, these runic alphabet that you see here, much, much, much different than what they actually wrote in Old Norse in the Viking era. So a lot of this stuff, like the Havamal and stuff, would not be written in Elder Futhark. It would be written in Younger Futhark. If at all, since a lot of it was written down after the Viking era, we might actually have it in Latin letters instead. Younger Futhark, so Elder Futhark had 24 characters, and then Younger Futhark had 16. And this is the 16 here. It's someone made a joke saying it's very similar to texting, which it kind of does. The website that I'd mentioned, this is awakenthenorth.org. This is a PDF here, so I'm going to copy this down. I'm going to pop this here so y'all can see that for whatever you want to use that for. There's this website, fatefulsigns.com, and they're talking about the Havamal, which actually matches the front of Jackson Crawford's book, where he's talking about where it came from. And basically, Crawford's talking about in 900 CE, it was probably from Norway, and then it was written down in 1270 CE, which is the same time we get the Poetic Edda. It's part of the Poetic Edda as far as I understand it. But this word here, people pronounce it Havamal. I pronounce it Halvamalch. So Halvamalch. It's kind of like a K sound at the end there, but more in the back of the throat. That's the way I learned how to pronounce it. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. I could be wrong. So take it for what it is. But according to this website here on Faithful Signs, the Halvamalch is a collection of ancient Norse wisdom thought to have been written down in about 1270 CE. The title Halvamalch translates as saying of Har. Har is the High One, another name for Odin. Hence, the ancient text means saying of the High One. These sayings are a collection of poetry offering insights and wisdom to help one lead an honorable life. And then over here, we got Britannica.com. Halvamalch is an Icelandic poem because it was written down in Iceland in 1270, even though it probably came over from Norway. And then we have some examples here. So this is what it would have looked like. So the Havamal text, which I think is fascinating and awesome to see. Look at this. So this is vikingmartialarts.com, and it's got some pictures of the original writings. I don't know. I find this stuff so fascinating. And again, right, Havamal, the High One's speech, or Othin's speech. And Havamal is a collection of wisdom and guidelines for living. Living good, written as a poem and attributed to the Norse god Odin. 10th century, blah, blah, blah. References to the Havamal is found in the 10th century Hakanormal by Eyvindr Skjoldspjörnler. Okay. Havamal is the most famous poem from the Elder Edda manuscript, also called the Poetic Edda, like I was saying. Written around the year 1270, the Elder Edda consists of 32 poems in all, written on 45 pages of vellum, or calf skin parchment. So yeah, this is some of the text here. So you can actually see it actually is not written in runes. I imagine it would have been written, things could have been written down in runes for the time period, but I guess talking about the runes is irrelevant for this conversation because that is clearly not runes that it's written in here at all. So this is actually a pretty cool site too you can check out. And as I was mentioning, that's so cool. Look at all those texts. That is really cool. I'm really glad I looked this up really quick and included this here. This is some awesome stuff. Even in the front of the Wanderer's Havamal, and I showed this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to show it again. You can see a page out of the book, and it's hard to make out, so I'm glad I brought it up here because you can make it out a lot easier on here. But this is awesome stuff. So I'm going to put all these websites below. If you will be going through more translations of this, please let us know the date. I know others who are interested in Norse culture and these texts. You betcha. And in fact, this live will be in my channel. You can share the first one with them as well if you'd like. I'm not sure if I'm going to do videos yet or if I'm going to do more lives. I might do more lives because I think it'd be fun to talk about some of this stuff. But so let's one more quick read on what we researched today. We talked about the first 3 stanzas. One more time because it's fun to try to pronounce this stuff. I love trying. Gatir allar adar gandi fram skovaskili skignastskili quiv at ovist at vita quar ovinir sidja a fleti fire. Basically, just be wary around you and watch what's going on when you're entering places, and you never know where a foe might be sitting. So be aware of your surroundings. Then the next one here. Again, going to do my best attempt. Gengfender heilar. Gester inkomen. Quar skal sidja sja. Mjok brother. Sa am bromdum skal. Sins a fresta frama. Basically, as far as I can tell, well, honor your host when you're a guest coming into a place, and the host should consider where that person should sit, and where that person sits, they should be ready to prove themselves as worthy. And that one's slightly confusing for me. I've never really fully understood that one. And then the third one, Elder Thorf, Thymes in komen, ok ani kallen, matar ok vada, mani Thorf, Thym hefrum fjall ferit. And if a wanderer is traveling and cold, let them in out of the cold and offer them food and clothes, because they will be weary from their travels. So just be hospitable to people. Be kind and considerate. That's the way I would interpret those 3. And I thought that was a lot of fun. Lives are good, especially if on a set time. For some reason, this reminds me of the film Seventh Seal about a medieval knight by Ingmar Bergman. Interesting. Not familiar with that one. All right, so if there are no other thoughts or questions or feedback, I'm going to wrap this live up for today, and we'll let this go to the archives, and I will post some links and references because this stuff is fun. And this is my first time actually streaming from my OBS, because last time I tried to do directly from my camera, and now I'm doing it from the OBS. So it's a little bit better, even though the video quality is lacking. It's, yeah, you can at least, yeah, you can still see. It's good enough. It works. Anyway. Thank you for hanging out, Fadista. Had a lot of fun.